Cheese.
Well, you patrons requested a video on cheese. I'm beginning to question you all, but you asked for it, so here we are. Welcome back to 5 Minute History, the weekly series where patrons choose the topic. Today, courtesy of Captain JB, we will be discussing the Great Cheese Riot of Nottingham. So, for this video, we have to go all the way back to 1766, 22 years before the landing of the first fleet in Botany Bay, and before James Cook even sailed up the east coast of Australia. We need to position ourselves that is marked by an era of hardship, rising food prices, and wait, now hang on, it's not meant to be a thought, it's meant to be a thought exercise, it's not meant to be real. Anyways, to appreciate why cheese of all things became the focal point of unrest in Nottingham, it's essential to understand that the economic context of, 1766. That year had seen an extremely bad harvest in England, and this caused a significant rise in the cost of basic food, bread, grain, dairy, you name it, it's all particularly impacted by the rise, and as always, it was the average person who copped the hikes. This is meant to be It's meant to be my job to bring you back into history so you can sort of, focus and see what it was like at the time. I don't like how much this one rhymes. Anyway, it actually got so bad across England in late summer and autumn 1766 that a wave of food riots and protests was recorded. These disturbances were largely driven by grievances over rising costs and the movement of foodstuffs out of local markets, with crowds frequently forcing traders to sell at lower prices or threatening to just yank their goods if they didn't abide. Nottingham's cheese uprising was a key part of this, and it kicked off during the city's Goose Fair, which was an annual event that had its roots in the medieval period. It was established back in the 11th century to coincide with the feast of St. Matthew, and the fair originally featured religious festivities and later became a significant trade event for livestock such as geese, hence the name Goose. By the 18th century, the Goose Fair was effectively a giant market though, think like sort of a modern day food festival sort of thing. Because of the shortages though, the prices of the cheese had been doubled since the week before. And the people, seeing how much cheese was, they were pretty mad that they couldn't afford it anymore and they kinda crashed out. And to be honest, after buying a beer at the SCG, valid. The riot itself began on October 2nd, and after a group of merchants from Lincolnshire entered the fair and purchased a large amount of the Nottinghamshire cheese, intending to transport it back to their home counties for sale. This action was seen by many locals as an attempt to remove valuable food from the local economy at a time when supply was already pretty tight, and they were trying to steal their cheese for profit. The people could not simply let this stand. A crowd of unhappy locals quickly gathered around the traders, where they demanded that the merchants not carry the cheese away, but instead distribute it amongst the townspeople. Tension began to grow when the people were not given their means of dairy production, and they started to get violent. Fueled by their desire for
cheese,
rioters began to loot cheese from stalls across the fair, overturning booths and grabbing wheels to either eat or roll through the streets. Hundreds of cheese wheels began to be propelled down the thoroughfares, such as Wheeler Gate and Peck Lane. It was a riot of angry men, women, and they were using cheese wheels as their weapon of choice. In what is perhaps the stupidest thing I've ever heard, the Mayor of Nottingham came out and attempted to intervene and restore some order, but this failed when a very large wheel of cheese came barreling down the street and knocked him over Indiana Jones Boulder style. I want to point out this is the period in which England began to conquer the world's oceans, and this is what they were up to on the home front. Locals went beyond the fairgrounds. Some set up makeshift roadblocks to intercept traders leaving with cheese. A cargo boat near Trent Bridge was loaded with cheese and then seized. Its contents were looted, despite the owner's willingness to sell it at a lower price or even just pay off the crowd. Warehouse after warehouse was then attacked, and disorder spread into parts of the city beyond the market itself. By the second day of unrest, Nottingham's authorities clued on to the fact that they kind of had a bit of a riot and a problem on their hands, and they called in the British Army's 1st Regiment of Light Dragoons, and they supplemented this with elements of the local militia. This did not work either, though. Despite the presence of the troops, the rioting persisted, and in attempting to disperse the crowd, Soldiers did open fire on the rioters. Among those struck was a bloke called William Eggleston of Colston, who was a local farmer reportedly just killed while protecting his cheese from rioters who were trying to steal it. Rioters, now even angrier, then proceeded to free prisoners from magistrates by attacking the house where they were held, smashing the windows to get in. Only after several days did the military manage to actually reassert control over the town, using armed convoys to secure wagons laden with cheese and escorting them out of the city. The man had stolen the cheese, the people had been suppressed. Locally, the chaos actually left a pretty deep scar on Nottingham's civic memory. People did die in this. For a time, cheese wagons leaving the city were actually organised into convoys to prevent plunder. Local newspapers were pretty harsh on the rioters for contributing to the shortages they themselves feared, even though the rioters only rioted because there were shortages being pushed on them. But these days, it's, well, changed a bit. We can see it for the absolute comedy and horror show that it was, for the fact it's just ridiculous that it happened. Commemorations take place quite often, and notably in 2016 on the 250th anniversary, there was a special service marked by civic figures and local businessmen celebrating Nottingham's history. Even as the city's food markets have transformed beyond recognition since those days, there's still quite a bit of harkening back to that era. But yeah, that's the story of the Nottingham cheese riot. Quite possibly one of the stupidest yet most relatable events in history. And yeah, no, I get it. I totally get it. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll catch you all next time.
Cheese.